And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney. Happy Baby Friday afternoon, folks.
Oh,
I tell you what,
yes.
we got a super special guest. We've got Ivy League grad, lawyer, author. Someone survived 25 years in LA. This is a super special guest. So, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, we have our guest, Aime Austin. You have such a fascinating career and life story. I can't wait to dive into it more. You've written 10 plus books. You have more on the way. Your latest, His Last Mistress, is such a twisty thriller that I am just like, number one, how do you come up with stories like these? And number two, are you okay? But we can
Okay.
get into that a little bit later. But as our viewers kind of settle in for our conversation today, for folks who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know JC kind of alluded to your very prestigious collegiate background and being involved in criminal law, and you've lived in some amazing places. What kind of brought you to where you are today, and why did you decide to get involved in writing fiction?
Oh, okay. So there's so many, so many different stories. So let me say this. Well, today I live in LA, so I have been here 25 years. I'm from New York City. I find LA odd. Well, no, every time I get in the car, I think, I'm still here. I was driving this morning and I thought, well, okay. Yeah. It's LA is interesting. So let me say this. So I'm from New York City. I went to school in New York and then Massachusetts. But the background for the Casey Court series, Nicole Long series in this book, they're all set in Ohio,
Mhm.
which is I am not from Ohio, but for a brief time in between New York and here, I lived in Ohio. It was my ex-husband. I was a trailing spouse, and he got a job in Ohio. And at the time, I still think of it. It when you come to a place as a non-native, it's so to me everything about it was different and striking. And I never spent any time in the Midwest before that or after, honestly. So it was just the Midwest is a whole different
Yeah,
way of
yeah. Say no
relating,
more.
way of
Say no more.
relating that is not LA. Okay, New York is very blunt, which I
Mhm.
love. Love it. Love it. LA, nobody ever says no. And in the Midwest, it's like an in between. And that that's a lot. It's a lot to get used to. But it was very inspiring in that it was so different that it really like caught my attention. In terms of writing fiction, so well, no, I know I always wanted to be a writer, but there was a lot of pressure in my family to have an education to fall back on. So while I was in college, I was writing. In law school, I had a newspaper. After law school, well, newspapers are so gone. I did like stringer work for newspapers. Well, I did a lot of work for a medium that no
Mhm.
longer exists. You know what I mean? I like interned at TV, like at stations. Somebody asked me about it. I was like, oh, the station's long gone. So all of that. So I always had an interest in media and storytelling. And the minute I paid off my loans for law school, honestly, I dove in just full time, which was at this point, oh my God, I'm sorry, 20 years. No, it can't be 20 years. It is 20 years. Okay. So it doesn't quite feel like yesterday, but that
Mhm.
seems like a lot. And that's where I am. I used to write romance, and then I switched to thrillers. I started, I started a thriller. I couldn't sell it, and then romance. I read a lot of as a child, adolescent, young adult, and then I sold those, and then I went along my little romance, and I was like, but wait, I still want to do the other books. And so I went back to thrillers and I alternated until maybe 4 or 5 years ago where I just
Mhm.
had to pick a lane. It's exhausting writing because you have to then manage two pen names, two careers, and it's a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people who do it and they do it well, but it's a lot. And so I settled into thrillers. and the stories are dark. But how will I say this? So I do write books. I do call them social thrillers because my time in Ohio working in juvenile and criminal, even the family law space, it's it's a dark space. It's not. I want it to be delightful, but people in those kind of crises, it's kind of a dark space, and it's the space where I existed practice wise, and it's what I primarily think of. And there's a lot of unfairness in the system, and for reasons unknown to me, it still like pokes at me, and I want to expose a lot of that a lot more.
Well, I think
Well, that
the
is that. Go ahead, Sarah.
well, I was just going to comment on the darkness part of them, and it's like, yes, the subject is heavy, and but there's just so much compassion there for your characters as well, and I think that it has a way of kind of bringing to light our own humanity as the reader, where we can recognize these situations are, very uncomfortable, or they're very like unfortunate. And in His Last Mistress, which we'll kind of queue up for our audience in just a moment, you have these three women that are locked together in something that I think is very relatable for a lot of people. I imagine that there are a lot of people in the world that at some point in their life, they'd have a partner who has betrayed their trust in some shape or form. Maybe not to the extreme that we have that we have here with Richard Sinclair. However, but I think that there's still something about that entertainment factor that I personally love reading. And I don't know if it's because like with all the problems that we have to deal with on a daily basis, it's like, at least my life isn't as chaotic and messy as these poor individuals. But it also like that empathy that I feel for them makes me feel like, okay, like I'm still grounded. I'm still connected enough to suffering within the world that it's like, this isn't just like washing over me and leaving me feeling hopeless or just like coming at me and like I don't feel anything from it. So I think that that's what's really, really important about thrillers in general, psychological, suspense, all of that good stuff. But this one is just so twisty. And so before we dive into it, I really want to just take a quick moment to say hello to the folks that are joining us in our chat. We've got DHB saying happy Thursday to everyone. We have Susan saying from Bedford, Ohio, saying hello, Aime. And I very excited to being able to meet you in your work. And we have Farmhouse Reader chiming in with a hello to everybody. So if you wouldn't mind, Aime, set the stage for us a little bit about His Last Mistress, because this is a standalone, whereas you have two other protagonists that lead the series that you write. So kind of take us through the conception of this particular project and just the drama that unfolds within it.
So I'm trying to think how I can do this without spoilers, because this is the problem with this book. Let me say this. I think that okay, I have a lot of thoughts all the time about lots of things. And no, it's just like, you get up and you're like, what about that? And what
Yep.
about this? Like today I'm all into like,
Welcome to the mind of a writer.
Yeah.
honestly, today I'm about people who are kidnapped. That's like where I am today. Or maternal mortality. And my son's like, stop talking about that. Well, I mentioned something and he's like, you've been talking about it for months. And I thought, oh, okay. So at the time I was writing this book, I will say this. I don't know how I lived many, many years, but I never really thought a lot about infidelity. I don't know why. It never came up in my life. It's not a feature of like, it's not like the tragic story of my family is not that. And so it just didn't come up. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people have it in their lives. I just don't know those people, or people I know don't talk about it, which is fair. And I started reading about infidelity, and I realized that it was a much bigger, I think, betrayal than I had ever thought. Actually, now I think at the catalyst, I met somebody who had engaged in a lot of infidelity. And the justifications, I was like, wait, what? I had to like really think about I didn't really think about it. It's just one of those things that I had not thought about. I'm sure I'm like, I also don't think about astrophysics, but you know what I mean? So there's many things I don't think about. And I went down, my whole life is rabbit holes. I'm going to be honest. Like if I'm not, if I look at my Google search, it's a lot. So, well, sometimes I look at it and go, well, that looks a little crazy. Like I should, delete some of these things. So I went down this sort of rabbit hole of infidelity. I read a lot about it. I listened to people who were very forgiving of it. I listened to people who were very critical of it. And I think I personally came to the determination that it's such a huge betrayal. And I think that society may spend too much time forgiving people for it. Because so there's a couple of authors. I mean, I read a lot of books about it. But there's one author who calls it like her name is Tracy Shorn, but she calls it the reconciliation industrial complex. And she talks about how there are a number of counselors, websites, books, whatever, that sort of push people towards reconciling, but it doesn't hold the person who did the betrayal accountable. And that's something I really wanted to explore because I realized there is a lack of accountability. Like even now, I started watching this reality show. Oh, sometimes during Christmas you have too much time. And I had subscribed to Peacock for 1 month to watch one thing that used to be like on a different streaming and then it went away. And I was like, okay, so I have like 28 days left, of Peacock that I've paid this $17 for. So I started watching this show called Married to Medicine. I've never watched a Bravo show before. I don't think I'd ever heard of Bravo. So I'm in my own world. And now know that Bravo has like a whole host of shows. Who knew? I'm sorry. I just woke up and people are like, where have you been? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't have cable. So started watching this show called Married to Medicine. And in the show, I think a couple of the husbands have affairs. And I think it wouldn't have come to light except the fact that they are on reality TV. So then it was like tabloid fodder. And there is such a push in this show, and the woman actually stayed with him, for them to get back together. And every time they talked about this man having an affair, it was, well, what did you do that you weren't enough for him? As opposed to what did he do that he could not leave the marriage, resolve his inner conflict or whatever. And every time they turned to him, he was like, well, you work too much. And she's a doctor like supporting this family. So, I mean, I don't know what the alternative is. Like, I don't know what the alternative, like homelessness. So it's like, well, you work too much and you're not home. And if you just did these things, then I wouldn't have cheated. And nobody ever addresses, okay, but you like went out, like flew to, I don't know, Hilton Head or somewhere, out like caught on tape, like, canoodling with this woman and taking no accountability. And all of the focus was on what did she do. And then occasionally he hits on people on the show. He's kind of creepy. And they're like, well, why did you sit in his lap? And they show the video. He literally pulls women into his lap. And they're like, well, but you're enticing him, and he's a cheater. So what? And I'm like, what is going on? So I had not thought of the narratives around cheating. So all this to say, this book starts out in the fundamental core of it is about this sort of cheater and the women around him. And everybody has a different perception. And it's very interesting. I don't know if I don't think I've ever personally met somebody who dated somebody who was married. So I can't speak to that. But it was just interesting, the justification everybody has for behavior and not a lot of focus, except for the therapist in this case, not a lot of focus on the person who is betraying, and going outside their marriage and maybe subjecting people to like STDs or whatever it is. So little focus on that. And so that was the catalyst and the genesis for the book. And I do have, my son calls it my database, but I do have a database of like characters that I can sort of like reach into and put them in situations because many of them exist in the periphery in the background. So Lulu has existed for the entire length of the series, but as the best friend of a main character, and she pops in and out, but it's not her
okay.
world.
Is that because there's a Casey that's mentioned? Okay,
Yeah.
because that was like, oh, I wonder if like those are the same Casey.
Yeah, so they were best friends. They met in law school. This is like in the 90s and in their timeline. And so they met in law school and she pops in and out, but she's kind of secretive. And well, I don't know. She's not a real person. Let me not say this. But I think one of the reasons she may be secretive is because the kind of relationships that she had engaged in. Because she's having an affair with somebody who's not exactly her boss, given the way law firms work, but he's a partner and she's
Yeah.
an associate. So the partners own the firm, but they're not necessarily people's bosses.
Yeah, but there's still a really bad power imbalance
Huge,
there. But
huge, so
yeah,
huge.
and yeah. So one of the things that I'd kind of like to get your thoughts on, Amy, is with the therapist, Dr. Suzanne Wolf. She's really faced with an ethical dilemma. And again, I don't want to, give anything away here, but can you talk about a little bit about, as there is as an attorney, there is attorney-client privilege, a doctor, there's doctor-patient
Huge
privilege.
privileges.
And there's also then I work in healthcare, so I know oftentimes that there is also the responsibility for both people in the legal, medical, whatever fields that, if you suspect there's somebody may be in danger or may be at risk of harming themselves, there is there is the potential for some responsibilities with regard to mandatory reporting to the authorities. So there's a lot going on here. Just with what Suzanne has to deal with. Can you talk a little bit about her? Because it's to Sarah's point, it's a fascinating conundrum she finds herself in.
So I will say this. So I want to give credit where credit is due. So I know a lot of authors, and one of the authors I know is a historical author named Grace Calloway. In her other life, before becoming an author full time, she was a therapist in California, working with clients. And when I started the book, I'm like, can I call you and ask you about this before I like put these people in a dilemma? So she does. Okay, so she's a psychiatrist. The main reason she's a psychiatrist is because of the family background of the characters. And how can I say this kindly? They're the kind of people who they want a doctor, you know what I mean? Like as opposed to like a LMFT or whatever it is. And I'm not, no shade on that because my therapist is a marriage and family therapist. But there are some people who are like, if they have an MD, it makes them feel better. So that's the basis of these characters. So as an MD, it's like pretty strict, doctor-patient privilege. And even if it was a therapist, the privilege would be as strict. The dilemma is whether or not I think, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, whether or not our clients are in danger. And it takes her a while to realize that she may have more knowledge than she thought. Because people come in, I come in and I'm dating Joe and she comes in, and people use, and in this case, people use nicknames. It's a thing that seems to come up a lot in books. But, and I think, to be honest, the person who's having the affair sort of has done this to like partition in his mind. When I'm at home, I'm, Richard, or when I'm like, on the side, I'm like Sinclair. So that's its own thing. So it takes the therapist a while to put that together. But I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And as long as there's no imminent harm coming, then, and this is true of lawyers, people can like kill people and do all sorts of things and tell you about it. And as long as it's in the past, it's absolutely confidential. So it becomes like the future forecasting, the future prediction. And I think she, like Dr. Wolf as it is, Suzanne Wolf, spends a lot of time trying to do that future casting. But then it comes down to what people actually say to you. And, you can't, as humans, we do fill in the blanks and tell ourselves stories. And I don't think anybody's sort of exempt from that. But I think in her professional capacity, she can't, well, I think this is going to happen, or I think X is going to happen. So she's then limited to only what she's being told and only what she can reasonably like predict or foresee. And so in this case, as it is, she didn't see harm coming in that way. And it's more about her clients harming themselves or harming other people than it is speculating about third parties who are not in the room.
I had to when I was reading, I had to like double check your background to be like, is Aime also a psychiatrist? Because the way that you write Suzanne's point of view is, I was just so fascinated by her thought process, where you're seeing how a therapist operates when they're speaking with somebody and trying to like parse the different threads out, with their clients. And to your point about wanting to really highlight the kind of the hypocrisy of the betrayer is the one that is so easily forgiven, and it's the betrayed that often has to deal like or shoulder a brunt of the reconciliation efforts. There was one line that I was like, ooh, it just like hit me so hard. And it was in the justification of, oh, this is why he's doing this, because you have Lulu, who knows that she's dating a married man, and something that she like kind of says to Suzanne during one of their session, and Suzanne's like internal monologue is, I wasn't going to let her sell me the victim story. Men of his ilk always had one. And for me, it showed how manipulative and masterful the betrayer is in these situations, and how these poor women who, and I don't like using the term poor women, because both of them are extremely intelligent and smart. You've got Deborah, who is like a neurosurgeon, and Lulu is a lawyer. And it's like, these are very smart, capable women, but there's something about this man that has just duped them. And I just found that absolutely fascinating. And I thought it was such an important point for the audience to take in, especially like the social commentary about like, hey, like we shouldn't be letting these people like get off the hook as easily. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe tell us a little bit more about your kind of goals with labeling this a social thriller. What are you hoping that your reader gets out of the experience of this?
I think so the social thriller, so here's the thing about living in LA. It first came up when I was at a screening of a movie. It was a Bulgarian movie that was like up for Oscar contention. And it was like, it came out probably right after COVID. And it was the first screening that was like outside the house, because for a while, you can still stream it mostly online. And I was like, I'm going to go out. I'm going to leave my house. I'm going to drive out. I'm going to like be in a movie theater with people. And it was this movie called Blaga's Lessons it's a Bulgarian film about like some of the things that are going on in Bulgaria right now. That's like a whole separate issue. But the director was there, and he was talking about the concept of social thrillers. And then I was like reading about it in terms of like Get Out and other there's a lot of movies that have that framework, but people don't use the framework for books. And I don't know why. Let me not say that. I felt it was like an accurate framework for what I wanted to write, because I do kill people occasionally, but across, I think 15 of these titles, I'm sorry, I don't know the number that are out. You know what I mean? So I think maybe, I don't know. I know I've written like 15 or 16, but maybe only 14 are available. But across these titles, in 80% of them, nobody dies. So the issue then for me is, it's not so much, I don't want to say this, most thrillers have a death. It's not a death, but it's like the death of an idea, the death of innocence, those kinds of things. And I think the social thriller category better contains that, so that people know that, how can I say this? Something bad's going to happen, and there's going to be a resolution, because it's a book, and it's in a genre. But I do want them to know that there's going to be a little bit more about it, whether it's about like in my beginning, I started with foster care, or like alcoholic parents, or international adoption. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts apparently about a lot of things, but it's going to tackle usually one issue at a time. And in this one, it was about betrayal, and that sort of that victim mentality, and how people sort of coalesce around the betrayer and not the betrayed. And I really wanted to talk about that because I didn't realize it was that way. And when I started listening to narratives, I realized a lot of narratives are that. I just started a book this morning. I was driving. So I read on Kindle and listen to audiobooks simultaneously to like keep it moving. And I just started a book. It's a sort of a memoir by Burden. And in the book, it was based on an essay in the New York Times, maybe at this point, 3 years ago. And it starts out with an affair. And her husband is like, I'm not happy. And he walks out on like 3 children and 2 houses. You know what I mean? He just like walks out the door. And fortunately, well, now they've gone back in time, so I'm not sure. I'm only like 4 chapters into the book, but it's sort of like people do ask, they're like, well, what did you do? And I'm like, what? She's got 3 children. Like, not everybody can like be singing. Everything can't be singing and dancing and amusement. And if people are not amused, then they betray. So in this book, that's the social issue. But in the terms of the social thriller, I just want to focus on something that I think is critical in society that we don't focus on, but in the thriller context. So there's some resolution, and it's not just an ongoing ill, you know, forever and
Yeah,
ever.
no, that framework really makes sense in light of the different topics that you have tackled throughout your writing. We do have a question from one of our viewers, Amy. Susan is asking, are your books standalone, or if they're series, both, what have you, and where would you start? Like, what do you recommend to somebody who's new to you? Where's the best place to get like a really good sense of your writing and getting on the path of Amy Austen?
So it's a big universe. They can, in my opinion, they can mostly be read as standalone because people do enter at all sorts of phases based on the emails I get. Oh, I just read X or I just read Y based on the cover, the backstory, whatever the thing is that grabbed them about it. So the first book that I wrote and the first book in the original series, Casey Court, is actually free. So it's called Judged and it's free everywhere. So it's a free, I mean, an ebook. I mean, you have to pay for audio and, paper. But that's a good entry point because it's not the start of Casey's story. It's where I started the series, honestly, but it's where I started the series. And you can get a sense because in that book, I'm going to ask, nobody dies. I think some reviewer recently, she's like, I read the books and she's like, I was really captivated. And I only got to the end and I realized nobody had died. I'm not saying that people don't die, but generally not. And so in that book is a lot about the foster care system and it's a lot about my original exposure to justice in Cleveland, and in the many ways in which it's unfair, which you walk into a system. I don't know. I was out of law school. I was like in my 20s and I was like, I'm just going to walk in. And you walk into a system that has been going on for years, and it's like you were like, "Oh, I'm going to become a cog in this machine," and I didn't realize there was a machine back here. And that's it. So that's it. So the Casey Court series has maybe 10 books. There's Nicole Long, who so Casey Court generally does defense work, and family law work, juvenile work, but generally on the defense side. I mean, just actually only. And then the Nicole Long series, which is a spinoff, she's a prosecutor. So it's the same issues with a different lens. And Nicole has her own stuff to deal with that like doesn't necessarily mesh with the system. And then this is a standalone, but it does tie up some of the stories of the other people. So there's a lot of people floating out there in my Cleveland world. And a few of them are, I don't say dealt with, but are in this book.
Excellent.
Nice.
That's a nice. I like that idea of having like the world, the universe.
Yeah, it's a big universe.
Yeah,
They
it's the
all
Austen
exist.
verse. There we go.
I like
the
that.
Austen verse. Yeah, there you go. Take it, run with it, please. So, kind of along that line, then, Amy, can you tell folks where they can find you online, how to kind of keep up with, because you mentioned you got some other stuff coming up down the road, how they can kind of keep in touch with you?
So fortunately, I have the same handle everywhere. So it's Legal Thriller Author. On any platform. I'm not on X or Twitter. That I gave up 10 years ago and I'm not going back. So I'm Legal Thriller Author everywhere. I generally post mostly on Instagram. and TikTok. And I've been doing so. I also have a podcast called A Time to Thrill.
Yes.
And I finally, I'm sure you have been in the space longer than I have. I finally came to video. Like I interview the who I interview is just basically brilliant creative women, but many of them are like best-selling authors that I know personally. And a few years ago, I was thinking I can't subject to middle-aged women to video. Like that's just not kind, you know. But I have finally come along. But it has made interviews slower to have because people are like, okay, so I have to be like somebody just texted me the other day. I've actually a very, very famous author, and she was like, wait, I have to be on video. She's like, oh no, no, no. She's like, I'm cleaning my house. She was like, I gotta reschedule so I can be like, 100%. So I do now, I'm posting more video outtakes from the podcast, which I'm really enjoying. So I do have these kinds of conversations with authors about some bigger social issues. It's apparently my thing. So these are the kind of conversations I have with various authors.
Wonderful. And
Nice.
I believe A Time to Thrill is on Amazon, or sorry, not Amazon. Well, it might be on Amazon, but Apple, Spotify, all the good podcast spots.
All the good podcast spots, and the last maybe 3 or 4 are in video. The one coming out next week is video. And it's actually my first singer, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh,
Cool.
That's exciting.
I know she's like a top chart Billboard artist, and I thought, I know musicians, but I don't understand music. Like, I don't know how people make music. I understand, like, I can write stories, but making music seems bizarre to me and foreign brain-wise. But I was like, oh, I'm going to interview a musician. I'm not sure I fully understand her process, but it's an interesting interview nonetheless.
So, folks, what's the name of your podcast again?
A Time to Thrill.
A Time to Thrill. There you go, folks. You know what? First buy Amy's books, and then when you're done with that, then look up A Time to Thrill and get that subscription in for that too. So there you go. There are your marching orders. Most of the country, it's going to be cold. No one wants to go outside, so
Yes.
stay indoors.
It's a good
podcasts,
weekend
and
for folks to read. We have in the chat Regina. Sorry, Regina, we'd missed your greeting, but we do see that you're saying hope we're all staying safe and warm, which we appreciate those good wishes because at least on the East Coast, we're like in that polar vortex thing that's happening. So should be an interesting weekend to see how things shape out with
It
some
is.
snow.
I won't tell you the weather out here. It's nice, but I will say this: before I left Budapest a couple of weeks ago, they went to a deep freeze.
Ooh.
So I had this thing. I was going to leave all my boots there, and I went to walk out of my apartment to get in the cab, and the slush was like, I was like, oh, ankle high. I was like,
Oh,
ooh,
man.
yikes!
but it's the Danube froze, the Balaton froze. It's like really a deep
Holy
freeze and
smokes.
snow too.
Oh, geez. Mother Nature is not happy with us.
Yeah.
So for the fact that a lot of us are going to be snowed in this weekend, Amy, do you have any recommendations for us for books to read, movies to watch, TV shows to watch, podcasts, audiobooks, all of that good stuff? Anything that's been keeping you entertained of late?
So I'm reading. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to look at the books because I'm very, very bad at titles. So I
No
do write
worries.
everything down. So I'm reading one book that's. So I listen to more than one book at a time because I'm that person. So I'm reading a book called How to Kill Men and Get Away with It that I got.
it.
I think mainly because of the title. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. And I am reading this Belle Burden book called Strangers, which is about her husband leaving her after an affair. But those are the two I'm reading. I'm reading like 5 books, but those are the 2 that I think I will finish over the weekend.
All right.
JC,
How about you,
what
Sarah?
about? Oh, I'm on the lighter side of entertainment at the moment. I am reading Leah Dobrinska's new rom-com, which is called First Down and Forever to Go. It's a football romance, and so that's just super cozy and perfect for the lead up to Valentine's Day that's coming. It's like the first book in a new series that she just launched. So I love the worlds that she creates, and it's nice to see characters from her other romances making appearances in this one. So yes, it's absolutely delightful. JC, what about you? Anything that new since we chatted on Tuesday?
I'm just going to say first off that, regarding the title, How to Kill Men and Get Away with It, odds are most of us deserved it, if not all of us deserved it. So, I'm not
had
going to
it
take
coming.
offense to a book like with that title. Yeah. So Having said that, so I just started, I'm still on my Agatha Christie kick, just started By the Pricking of My Thumbs. It's a Tommy and Tuppence novel. It's the last of the four that she wrote about Tommy and Tuppence. So it's been a lot of fun so far. So that's what I got.
I'm learning so much about Agatha Christie through you because like there are just some random titles that I just never knew even existed. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
keep them coming for us.
All right.
Aime, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I told you that we could have fun with talking about
Heavy topics.
infidelity and betrayal and all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing a moment with us today. It was wonderful to meet you and to hear about your story, as well as this championing these topics in a way that I think are very, very digestible for the reading public, and very thought provoking. And so I am very excited to see what comes next from you, and checking out your podcast, A Time to Thrill, which a perfect title. Chef's kiss. For our wonderful viewers, thank you for being here with us this afternoon. It's always wonderful to be able to hang out with you. Next week, we have two shows coming to you, one on Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. and the other on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Our guests are cozy mystery author Linda Allen and cozy mystery author Susan Van Kirk. So we will have more murder and mayhem for you, which, bring it on. That's our bag here. So thank you all for stopping by. We really appreciate it. And until we see you again, stay bookish, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.